Jai Hind everyone. Myself Rupak Kumar from Akgec Engineering College, Ghaziabad. Today we start one of the important topic from the database management system. As database management system is very important in terms of project, in terms of any software which we are using to store the data, and then we fetching that data from that database. So the database management system is one of the important subject in B.Tech. So we start the important topic from that DBMS is keys. What is keys in DBMS? First we have a definitions of key. So definitions of key is, it says a key is an attribute or set of attribute that uniquely defined. Means as we discuss what is the key, it is a basically it is a attribute, and it is attribute that it is attribute or a set of attribute it is an attribute or a set of, it may be an attribute only, or we can say a set of attributes that is uniquely identify any records. Records means you can say records or tuples, or we can say files from the tables. So files, record and tuples are same. So it defines an attributes of us or a set of attributes that uniquely identify the records or a tuple from the table. So what is the purpose? Why we need the keys in a database management system? So if we talk about the key, we can say key is basically used to uniquely identify. The important thing, it uniquely identify any records, or we can say any row in a database from the table. So if you want to identify anything, it is the key which identify all the attributes inside the tables. So it is very important perspective in terms of RDBMS, that is Relational Database Management System, and it is also used to establish any identify relationship between the tables. It is used to establish and identify the relationship. Means it is that key which make a relations between one table to another table. It is with the help of that keys only we can just recognize, we can just find all the tuples, all the attributes from that tables. And it is also used to find some queries from the inside from that tables. So this is what the important is perspective of relational database management system. So concept of key is very important, and it is that what uniquely define all the attributes inside the tables. So this is what the one of the example we can see. It is an employee table in which we have an attribute like employee ID, employee name, Aadhaar number, email ID and department ID. This is what the attributes of this employee table. This is what the entity, and in ER diagram it is entity and it is attribute. But in table it say it's a employee file, employee tables or employee tuples in which we have a 5 attributes like email ID, name, Aadhaar number, employee ID and department ID. So we can have a employee ID like 1, 2, 3, 4 and all so on. We have a name like this, and Aadhaar number, email ID and department ID. So in this table, if we say what is the key, so we can see that employee ID is the key. It can be a key, and that can be uniquely identify all the other tuples in the tables. So we can see here by employee ID we can identify as there is another key also, that is what we can say Aadhaar number. It is a one of it may be also a key for this table, and it is also a unique numbers. Aadhaar number is unique number, so it can be also a key, or you can say primary key inside the table. Email ID, it is also a unique thing. It may be also a key inside this table we can see, but department ID it is repeated, so it may not be a primary key. So this is what we can see, how we see the key or how we find the key. It's a basic concept that we can see in this table. So first we talk about the types of key. Types of key in a DBMS, we have a super key. Second is candidate key, primary key, alternate key, foreign key, composite key. So we have 6 types of key which supported by database management system. So we see all these key today with the help of some tables: super key, candidate key, primary key, alternate key, foreign key, composite key. If we discuss about the super key, so we can say the super key is basically, it is a all combinations, means super key is one of the employee ID also, super key Aadhaar number also, super key may be combinations of employee ID and Aadhaar number, super key may be a name and Aadhaar, super key may be a employee name, employee ID and department. So it is a all the possible combinations which uniquely identify this table is called super key. So super key is which uniquely find or identify the table. So it is a super key. From these, all this super key which we just find from this table, from all this super key, the candidate key is the minimal super key. So we have a combinations of key also here, but we can, the minimal super key means the employee ID itself is a key, so it is a minimal super key. Aadhaar number itself is a key, it is a minimal super key. It may be a combination of employee ID and name and all other, which is the minimal combinations of the key, that is known as the candidate key. We'll see later on with example also, but here is the basic fundamental. Super key is all possible combinations of key which uniquely identify the tables, and the candidate key is the all minimal super key. From that super key we find the, we detect the candidate key, and it is a minimal combinations of the keys is called candidate key. From these candidate key, now we have a suppose 2 or 3 candidate key from this 5 or 10 super key. So we can have a 3 candidate key, we find it is a minimal super key. From this we find this. Now from this we just find the primary key, and primary key, all the candidate key is eligible for a primary key. All the candidate key which is minimal super key is eligible for a primary key, means this is also a primary key, this is also a primary key, this is also a primary key. But who decide the which one is primary key? So it is that the database administrator, it is that what the database designer who decide the primary key from this candidate key. From these 3, 1, 2 and 3, any one can be chosen, any one of the key can be chosen for a primary key. So this is what we can say a definition of primary key. Here we can understand super key is all possible combination, it is a minimal super key, it is that what we choose from this candidate key only, and that is what the primary key. Next, alternate key. If we choose one of the key, this means this one is chosen as a primary key, then the left key is known as alternate key. Means from that candidate key, if the primary key is chosen one from that, and left of that is known as alternate key. So this is what the alternate key. Next is a foreign key. Foreign key is basically, it is the primary key in one table, and in other table it is also a key, that it is called as foreign key, not a primary key, but it's a foreign key, because that is what may be repeated and at that. So at one table it is a key, and in another table like that, if you can see in this table, it may be a foreign key here, and it may be, if we create a department table from this, we can see if we create a department ID and we can say employee ID. So here 1, 2, 3, and here we can say employee name. So we can write the name of the employee here. So this is what in this table, it is a basically primary key, but this is what reference table, it is a foreign key. So this is what the concept of primary key and foreign key. Clear? So did you getting the things now? So what is the super key? It is a all possible combination. What is the candidate key? It is a minimal super key. What is the primary key? It is basically chosen from this candidate key only. Alternate key left of that, which is not primary key, and foreign key is shown in alternate table, reference and referencing table, and composite key is basically combinations of these key is all called composite key. So we can understand these one by one properly. So first erase this. Yeah. Next. From this super all these 6 key, we have first is your super key. Now we just going to know what is super key. So if we define the super key, we can say super key is basically a combination of all possible attributes. Means from all the attribute which is given in this table, so all the possible attributes, this is what the attributes, employee ID, name, Aadhaar number, email ID. So all the possible, its definition is that a super key is a combination of all possible attributes that can uniquely identify the row. Row means the tuples, means the given entries in the given relation. So in the given relation, the super key is basically combination of all possible attributes that can uniquely identify the row or tuples in the given relation is called a super key. So super key, if we say super key is basically a superset of candidate key. Super key is basically not a subset, it is a superset. It is a superset basically of a candidate key. So super key is basically superset of candidate key, we can say. This is one of the point from the super key. Next point, we can say a table can have many super key. Means it is not fixed that in a table how many super keys is there. You have to find all the possible combination of from that attribute which is uniquely identify the tables, means all that possible combination is called super key. So there is no any limit that how much super key inside one table. It's all depends on the attribute which combinedly uniquely define the keys. Clear? Next is your a table. A table can have a many super key. So if you talk about any table, so if any table we contain, it is not a fixed, it may have several super key inside any table. Next point is that a super key may have additional attributes that are not needed for uniquely identify. Means a super key may have additional attribute and that are not needed for the uniquely identify. This is what the third point from the super key. So this is all about your super key. So we can say the super key is basically a superset. So we can see here in this example, we have a employee ID, name, Aadhaar number, email ID and department ID. So in this, we can see that this is what the employee ID 1, 2 and 3. This is what the name. This is what we can say entry inside this tuple. We can say files, Aman, Neha and all. Aadhaar number of these employees there and employee email ID is there and department they related with. So these are all the content in this table. Now we have to find the super key. So first we can say employee ID. Employee ID is basically it is a super key. Next we can say name. Name is not itself a super key. Second, Aadhaar number, it can be itself a super key. Email ID itself a keys, means it can be super key. Now we combine these email ID and Aadhaar number. It is also a super key. Combinations of this Aadhaar number and email ID. This is also employee ID, Aadhaar number, email ID, employee ID, email ID, employee ID, Aadhaar number and email. We can take combination of 3 also. We can take combinations of 8 also. Means all the possible permutation and combinations of these attribute can have the super key inside the table. So जितने भी possible combination होंगे, we can say all are. These all are 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10. It may be more than 10. We can have a combinations of all 4. We can have a combinations of all 3, 2. Means we can find the permutation of these, or we can just find the number of super key inside this table. So this is what all about super key. So next key we have a candidate key. So if we have a definitions of this candidate key, we can say a candidate key is an attribute, or we can say set of attribute. It is not only attribute, it may be a set of attribute which can uniquely identify a tuple. Which can uniquely identify the tuple is called candidate key. So we can say candidate key is nothing but a minimal super key, or we can say super key with no redundant attributes. Hence that attributes cannot be redundant from that is called a candidate key. Means we can take the candidate key, and we cannot have from that candidate key, we can just we cannot divide the key, we cannot find the another candidate key from that key, is called a redundant attributes, means it cannot further be divided for a keys. So this is a minimal super key, is known as candidate key. Next, it is called a minimal super key because we select a candidate key from a set of super key, such that selected candidate key is the minimal attributes. It's required to uniquely identify the tables, means it is called a minimal super key because we select a candidate key from a set of super key, such that selected candidate key in the minimal attribute required to uniquely identify the table. Next is a candidate key. Candidate key are defined as the distinct set of attributes from which primary key can be selected. Means how we define the candidate key? We can say it is as a distinct set of attributes. From where? From which primary key can be, it is that key, it is that combination of key from which we just find the primary key. And candidate key are not allowed to have a null value. We cannot say in this table the no candidate key is there. There must be minimum one candidate key in every table, and that is what uniquely identify the things. So we can say the candidate key value never be null. There must be minimum one candidate key is there. So, and that candidate key is called basically primary key. So because we just selected the things from the candidate key only, we just selected the primary key from candidate key only, and every table must have a primary key. Then only we can find something, then only we can extract something what we want to extract from that database. So it is very important, there must be a primary key inside any tables. Clear? Next, we can see here, it is all employee ID, Aadhaar number and email ID. This is what the minimal super key from that combinations of super key. So this minimal super key, all these three minimal super key is known as candidate key. No? So here employee ID, Aadhaar number and email ID is candidate key from this table. So it is what, because it's a, why it is a candidate key, because it is a minimal super key. We cannot further divide this employee ID, we cannot further divide this Aadhaar number and email ID, but we can divide this combination of email ID and Aadhaar number. They all individually also a candidate key. So this is what we can say. So that email ID and Aadhaar number combination from that super key is not a candidate key. So it is all about the candidate key. Clear? Now next type of key which we have, that is what? The primary key. So what we say, a primary key is basically one of the candidate key, that is what chosen by the designer of database, or we can say it is a uniquely identify the tuples in the relation. So basically candidate key is eligible for primary key, and that eligibility given by the database designer or administrator only. So if we talk about some point of the primary key, so first we have the value of primary key cannot be null. It is never null. There must be one of them from that. So second point, we can say the value of primary key must always be unique. It is uniquely identify the table. So that's why it is very important. Its value, it is always unique. No duplicate candidate primary key is there. So there is one and only one primary key, and that primary key is chosen by database administrator only. Next point for the primary key is that the value of primary key can never be changed. Means we cannot not change the value of primary key once it is inserted in a database. So once we create the database, once we create a table, we add the tuples inside that. If you want to change, any entry can be changed, but the primary key cannot be changed, or no updation is possible in the primary key. If you want to change, we have to change the entire table for changing the primary key. So it's a very important point regarding the primary key. Next point, we can say the value of primary key. Basically, the value of primary key must be assigned when inserting a record. So a relation, we can say the value of primary key must be assigned when it is assigned when we inserting the records inside the table. At that time, we decide the value of primary key, and it is never be changed or can't be updated once it's designed. What we can do, we have to change. We have to delete all the table and create another table if you want to decide something from this. Next is your a relation. Relation is always allowed to have only one primary key. Means every relation, every files, every tuples, we have one primary key only. We cannot say there is a two or three primary key inside any table. Likewise, here it is also a candidate key. It was also a candidate key, and it is also a candidate key inside this table. But we just decide, the database designer decide that employee ID is basically a primary key. That's why it is a primary key, and we cannot say it is also primary key in this table. It is an alternate key. So the key which is left in a candidate key except primary key is called alternate key. So only one primary key in every table can be defined in the database. Clear? Next is your alternate key. We already discussed this, that out of all candidate key, we just selected one for a primary key only. So remaining key are also known as alternate key. The key which is left in a candidate key, which is not chosen by administrator, database designer as a key, as a primary key, then the left of all this key is called a basically alternate key. So in this employee table, we can see the employee ID is the best suited for the primary key, but the rest of that means from that we have a Aadhaar number, we have an email ID, and these two is considered as a alternate key in the given table. So what is alternate key? It is the key which is left, which is not chosen by the administrator or designer for a primary key, is known as alternate key. This is all clear about this alternate key. So we can see here in this table, we can find that primary key, employee ID. In this we have a left from that candidate key is Aadhaar number and email ID. So if primary key is chosen, then we have an alternate key like Aadhaar number and email ID. If we say we choose a primary key, not employee ID, we can choose primary key as an Aadhaar number, then we can say the alternate key is basically employee ID and email ID is alternate key. So it is not fixed that you are just choosing which one is a primary key. Any one from the candidate key can be chosen as a primary key, as a primary key, and left is called alternate key. If we choose email ID as a primary key, suppose this is also not chosen. If we say, we can say that we just choose this email ID as a primary key, then these two is alternate key. This is not alternate key, and this email ID and Aadhaar number is alternate key. So left from that candidate key is called alternate key. This is all about the alternate key in a DBMS. Next is your foreign key. What is foreign key? It is very important concept in a relational algebra. That is what foreign key, basically a key used to link two tables together. Means we are just all the key inside one table only, but foreign key is we have to take example of two tables, then only we can define the foreign key. So we can say a key used to link two tables together. That if you link the two tables together, then it is called a foreign key. So an attribute, or we can say attribute, or we can take a set of attribute in a one table that refers to a primary key is in another table. So there was referred tables and referencing table. So that is what that refers tables is basically have an attribute which is chosen as a primary key, and in another table it is in referencing table it is a foreign key. So what is the purpose of foreign key? Basically we can say the purpose of foreign key is to ensure, or we can say maintain a, this is what the one type of integrity constant. This is what the referential integrity constant. Referential integrity is basically maintained by this foreign key. Clear? This is all about your foreign key. So foreign key is basically reference the primary key of the tables, and foreign key can also only taken as a value and are present in the primary key of the referencing relation. So foreign key may have a name other than that primary key. It may be not the same as a primary key, and foreign key can take the value null also. We can take a null value in a foreign key. There is no any restrictions for foreign key to be unique. So in fact, a foreign key is not a unique most of the time, and we can say a reference relations may also called as the master table or a primary table. So referencing relation may also called as a referenced or a foreign table in a foreign table. This is what we can see here in an implied table. If we create a department table separately, in department table it is a primary key, and this is what is a reference table, and it is taking reference from this referencing table. That is what department ID is here a foreign key. It is not a primary key, but in this table, in department table, it is a primary key. This is what the example of foreign key. Next and last type of key is your composite key. So we can say the definition of composite key is that a key that has more than one attribute is also known as composite key. Means if we create a key with a combinations of more than one, that is called composite key. So if we can see here, we can make a key like customer ID and order ID, customer ID and product code. Likewise, we can create a composite key. Here example of the composite key is customer ID and product code. Thank you. This is all about the key in a DBMS. Thank you all.